In early 1941, German forces were dispatched to North Africa, the Balkans, and the Middle East. In February, German troops arrived in Libya to reinforce the Italian presence. In April, Hitler initiated the invasion of Yugoslavia, which was swiftly followed by an assault on Greece. In May, German forces were sent to assist Iraqi forces battling the British and to invade Crete. On June 22, 1941, in violation of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939, over 3 million Axis troops launched an attack on the Soviet Union. This offensive, named Operation Barbarossa, aimed to obliterate the Soviet Union and seize its natural resources for future aggression against Western powers. It was also part of a broader strategy to secure more living space for Germans. Hitler believed that a successful invasion would compel Britain to negotiate a surrender. Significant territories, including the Baltic republics, Belarus, and western Ukraine, were captured. By early August, Axis forces had advanced 500 kilometers, 310 miles, and achieved victory in the Battle of Smolensk. However, Hitler instructed Army Group Center to halt its advance toward Moscow temporarily and redirect its panzer divisions to encircle Leningrad and Kyiv. His generals opposed this diversion, especially since they were within 400 kilometers, 250 miles of Moscow, leading to a crisis in military leadership. The pause allowed the Red Army to mobilize fresh reserves. Historian Russell Stolfi considers this a critical factor contributing to the failure of the Moscow offensive, which resumed in October 1941 and ended disastrously in December. During this turmoil, Hitler appointed himself leader of the Oberkommando des Heeres. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked the American fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. 4 days later, Hitler declared war on the United States. On December 18, 1941, Himmler asked Hitler, "What should we do with the Jews of Russia?" To which Hitler responded, "Exterminate them as partisans." Israeli historian Yehuda Bauer noted that this remark likely represents the closest historians may come to a definitive command from Hitler regarding the genocide conducted during the Holocaust. In late 1942, German forces faced defeat in the Second Battle of El Alamein, thwarting Hitler's ambitions to capture the Suez Canal and dominate the Middle East. Overconfident due to earlier successes in 1940, Hitler grew distrustful of his army high command, leading him to interfere in military planning, often with detrimental outcomes. His refusal to permit a withdrawal during the Battle of Stalingrad in December 1942 and January 1943 resulted in near-total destruction of the Sixth Army, with over 200,000 Axis soldiers killed and 235,000 taken prisoner. Subsequently, a decisive strategic defeat occurred at the Battle of Kursk. Hitler's military judgment became increasingly erratic, coinciding with a decline in Germany's military and economic standing, as well as Hitler's health. Following the Allied invasion of Sicily in 1943, Mussolini was ousted by King Victor Emmanuel III after a no-confidence vote by the Grand Council of Fascism. Marshal Pietro Badoglio took control of the government and promptly surrendered to the Allies. Throughout 1943 and 1944, the Soviet Union steadily pushed Hitler's forces back along the Eastern Front. On June 6, 1944, the Western Allied forces landed in northern France in one of history's largest amphibious operations, known as Operation Overlord. Many German officers concluded that defeat was inevitable and that continuing under Hitler's leadership would lead to the country's complete destruction. Between 1939 and 1945, various plots were devised to assassinate Hitler, some progressing significantly. The most notable was the July 20th plot of 1944, originated within Germany, partly motivated by the growing likelihood of German defeat. As part of Operation Valkyrie, Klaus von Stauffenberg planted a bomb at one of Hitler's headquarters, the Wolf's Lair in Rastenburg. Hitler narrowly escaped death because staff officer Heinz Brandt moved the briefcase containing the bomb behind a leg of the heavy conference table, diminishing the explosion's impact. In retaliation, Hitler ordered brutal reprisals, resulting in the execution of over 4,900 individuals. According to British scholar Dan Plesh, Hitler was placed on the United Nations War Crimes Commission's first list of war criminals in December 1944. as it was determined he could be held criminally liable for Nazi actions in occupied countries. By March 1945, at least 7 indictments had been filed against him. By late 1944, both the Red Army and Western Allies were advancing into Germany. Recognizing the formidable strength and resolve of the Red Army, Hitler opted to deploy his remaining mobile reserves against the American and British forces, which he regarded as comparatively weaker. On December 16th, he initiated the Ardennes offensive to sow discord among the Western Allies and possibly persuade them to join his struggle against the Soviets. Although initially met with some success, the offensive ultimately failed. With much of Germany devastated by January 1945, Hitler addressed the nation via radio, asserting, "No matter how severe the crisis may be at this moment, we shall, against all odds, overcome it through our unwavering will." Believing that Germany's military setbacks warranted the forfeiture of its right to exist as a nation, Hitler ordered the destruction of all German industrial infrastructure before it could be seized by the Allies. Armaments Minister Albert Speer was tasked with carrying out this scorched earth strategy, but secretly chose to disregard the order. Hitler was briefly encouraged by the prospect of negotiating peace with the United States and Britain following U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's death on April 12, 1945. However, this event did not create any division among the Allies. On April 20th, Hitler celebrated his 56th and final birthday with a trip from the Führer bunker to the surface. In the ruined garden of the Reich Chancellery, he awarded Iron Crosses to young members of the Hitler Youth who were engaged in combat against the Red Army near Berlin. By April 21st, Georgy Zhukov's 1st Belarusian Front had breached the defenses of General Gotthard Heinrich's Army Group Vistula during the Battle of the Silo Heights, advancing to the outskirts of Berlin. In denial regarding the critical situation, Hitler pinned his hopes on the undermanned and poorly equipped Armeeabteilung Steiner, Army Detachment Steiner, led by Felix Steiner. He commanded Steiner to target the northern flank of the salient while directing the German Ninth Army to execute a pincer movement northward. During a military meeting on April 22nd, Hitler inquired about Steiner's offensive. He learned that the attack had not commenced and that Soviet forces had encircled Berlin. Ordering everyone except Wilhelm Keitel, Alfred Jodl, Hans Krebs, and Wilhelm Burgdorf to leave the room, he erupted in a tirade against the supposed betrayal and incompetence of his generals, culminating in his statement that everything is lost for the first time. He declared his intention to remain in Berlin until the end and then take his own life. By April 23rd, the Red Army had completely surrounded Berlin, prompting Goebbels to issue a proclamation urging citizens to defend the city. On the same day, Göring sent a telegram from Berchtesgaden claiming that since Hitler was isolated in Berlin, he should take over leadership of Germany. Göring established a deadline, after which he would consider Hitler incapacitated. Hitler countered by having Göring arrested and, in his final will and testament, dated April 29th, stripped Göring of all government roles. On April 28th, Hitler discovered that Himmler, who had departed Berlin on April 20th, was seeking to negotiate a surrender with the Western Allies. Viewing this as treasonous, he ordered Himmler's arrest and the execution of Hermann Fagel.